now you're an author, so you've moved to, your creative expression is across so many different areas. And so it seems like maybe part of what happens, I know this with me, is that you're looking to expand the way that you create, but also maybe, like, are you looking also for that, I want to feel that again, and maybe in a different medium or in a whole different challenge or a different area, I can get to that place?
Don't be so smart. I think you're absolutely right. I never thought of that, but I think you're right. I think you're absolutely on the money. And also, I mean, at my core is serving others. So how can I serve them? I've been serving them musically for years and years and years, and it never gets old. But I just thought and besides which, Aesop's story came to me, and I wrote it down.
Yeah. So tell me,
that's my job.
Right. So let's tell me a little bit about the book and what it's about.
Well, it is a reimagining of the life of Aesop, who wrote the fables, and he's been living with me a long time. And it actually started when my dad owned a record store, because he used to bring us home records. And one of the things he brought home that I didn't ask for was, it was called a reader record that Warner Brothers did in the late 40s. And it had pictures drawn by the guys who did the cartoons. Yeah. Mel Blanc was the voice. And they told great stories, classic stories. Well, the first one he brought home was Bugs Bunny and the Tortoise. Now, I didn't know it was an Aesop's fable, but it was. But because Bugs was the star, he won. Barely, he won by an ear.
Right.
I was so enthralled with the story. When Dad came home, I said, "Dad, I love this. This is so great. I love this story." He said, "I'm so glad you do, son. It's not new." I said, "Really?" He says, "No, it's got to be 2,500 years old." I said, "No, Bugs Bunny wasn't alive 2,500 years ago." And he said, "You're right, but the story is that old." So then he brought me home a book of Aesop's fables, and we talked about them. And he talked about the simple truth in them, and how such a simple story with a profound meaning will stay with us always, because we discover the truth in them and we own it. And it's kind of like the way you learn, by sitting down and listening to Puccini and looking at the score with my dad, where it's fun. I'll never forget that moment in my life, and I can still see the score in front of my eyes, because it was a discovery that I made. My dad just gave me the opportunity. So I loved this. And then, I went on and grew up and did all that stuff and left the fables behind. I thought they were for kids. And then later on, I had bought my first house, and it had a library in it, and I owned 3 books, because I always give them away. And so I started buying books to fill that library. And I was single, knew that I would have kids at one time, and I thought how cool it would be for them to have a library,
Yeah.
So when Aesop's Fables came in, the preface of that particular edition said, "Although Aesop was born a slave in 620 BC with no access to wealth or influence, later in his life, he served as ambassador to King Croesus of Lydia, who was the wealthiest and most powerful man in the world." And that led me to ask a question that changed my life, which was, how did he do that? And the instant I asked that question, I felt a rush of energy in me that was like a chill, but it wasn't cold. And from that moment, I thought about Aesop every single day. And the next day I picked up Quincy, because at the time that I read this, I was in the studio with Quincy and Michael. We're doing Off the Wall. Not only do I have songs on it, but I'm the associate producer with Quincy as well. So I pick him up. Quincy never drove. I think that's such a cool thing. Well, he just doesn't want to be bothered with it. You know what I mean? It takes energy. So anyway, I picked him up and we're driving. I said, "Man, this happened." I told him what happened today, and he says, "Man, listen to this." So I did. And within 2 weeks of that, reading that preface, I received a call from Bob Yanni saying, "I want you to come to Radio City and be my creative director." I said, "Well, I'd like to, but I'm in the middle of an album with Quincy." And he said, "Well, it's your choice." So I mentioned it to Quincy, and he said, "What, be the correct creative director at Radio City Music Hall? Are you kidding? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. Get your booty to New York." Yeah. And I said, "But we're in the middle of an album." He said, "Nad, I produced before you. I'll produce after you. Go. So went there, did the show. The show was a big hit, which was a thrill for all of us. And that was another wow, to have a 6,000 seat
I bet.
theater with four elevators. And Bob wanted to use it all. That was the first thing he said, because I was in a meeting with him every day, and we were in a room that was at least 40 by 40, and it was covered with paper drawings, all sorts of things, you know. And he said, okay, the first thing is we're showing every trick this hall has. And it was such a glorious thing. And I wrote 5 songs for the show, and I get a call from the biggest publisher on Broadway, and says, I want to talk to you. And he said, you have a knack for the theater. I like your music. Do you have any ideas for a show? And I said, well, yeah, Aesop moved in with me. I think about him every day. And he said, perfect. I'll tell you what, I will usher you and I will shepherd you through the process of writing a Broadway musical. Provided that you spend 5 hours a day in the New York libraries, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so I said, well, I've just been here 3 months. I'm creative director at Radio City Musical. He says, your choice. Went back to Bob, told Bob. Bob says, get out of here. Tommy Milando has never done this before. If he's going to shepherd you, this is a once in a lifetime. So 2 once-in-a-lifetime opportunities within 4 months. And this is after reading this preface. And thank God for my father who prepared me for this, to listen. Because it would have been so easy to say, hey man, I'm working with Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones. I'm not going to do that, you know?
No.
And the same thing with Radio City. Hey man, I'm cool. I love what I'm doing. But somehow I followed this star. And in the process, within 6 months, I had written the story and I had 9 songs. The first 2 people that heard it were the 2 biggest producers on Broadway, Michael Bennett and Harold Prince. Harold loved my story, wasn't thrilled with my music. Michael Bennett loved my music, was not thrilled with the story. I was so confused. And Tommy kept saying, listen to your own self, listen to yourself. He was like my dad again. Listen to what's going on. So luckily, I met my wife, and I put Aesop away. And for the next 17 years, I moved back to LA and went back into production like I had done before. But now that I'd been creative director, that was expanded too.
Right, yeah.
So I was really enjoying myself in the industry while raising my children.
Right.
And that was all great. And then as life would have it, about 17 years later, I found myself a single man again. And I was living in a club downtown LA, grieving for my family and wondering where I was going to pour this passion. And I felt Aesop's presence. And what I heard was, remember me? Let's go to work. So I created the musical, took it out, filled it out. I learned a lot from Harold and Michael, and somehow I kind of hit the middle ground. Did it 3 different ways, wrote 3 musicals virtually on this story. Then did it as an opera. Carl Reiner heard it and said, this is epic. This needs to be an opera. So I thought, well, I'd better write it as an opera. And I did. And the comments were the same, whether it was a musical or an opera. Too much story for the medium, we were totally confused. Too many characters, too much story. Don't know where it's going, but we love it. But we love the idea. So finally, I was very steadfast with that idea. I virtually tried everything I knew how to try.
Sounds like it.
Yes. And finally was a little disappointed, you know? And I was talking with a buddy of mine who's a Broadway writer, and he says, you know, Tommy, what you need to do is write this as a novel. And I said, but I've never written a novel. And he says, well...
Hasn't stopped you with anything else before.
That's what he said.
Right.
He said, you know, there was a time when you'd never written music.
Right.
And it's amazing how the universe conspires to help us when we make a choice. And I said, I made the decision right then. Okay, I'm going to write a novel. And then, you know, the guy in the red suit that sits over here with a pointed tail. It's going, you don't know how to write a novel. Stick to what you know, you idiot. You're going to make a fool of yourself, you know. And then the guy over here with the wings and the white is saying, hey, man, why not? Let's do it.
Right.
And I fought with myself a lot. And it was a great moment. Another transformational moment for me was that we all have a God. You know, my God is Zeus because it's a name. You know, but to me, it's just the same energy. And I'm saying, Zeus, give me some help here. I mean, I don't know what to do. And finally, it came to me. I said to the guy in the red suit, thank you for your input. I appreciate it. Keep it coming. And then I went to the guy in white and said, let's go to work. And I excused him. So as I hopped into it, Aesop really took the reins. And I just listened. And the first line of the book is, I was born on an island. And I figured, well, again, I didn't figure. This all came to me. Well, if Aesop's story is going to be told, who can tell it better than him? It's one of the greatest stories. So it became in the first person. And then I heard people say, well, you know, it's hard to write a novel in the first person. I said, I don't even know how to write a novel. I'm just writing it in the first person. You know, it's so funny.
Right.
And they're trying to protect us. That's why they're telling us
of course.
that. And again, I go, thank you for your input. So that's been a great learning experience for me, to listen to what people have to say in earnest and know why they're saying it, because they care for me, and appreciating it because of that.
Right.
But what they're saying doesn't necessarily, if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I still want them to keep it coming.
Yeah.
And I think when we give gratitude to others, we keep the door open.
Yeah. And also when give gratitude to others and allow them to keep it coming. When we acknowledge also that it's coming mostly from love, not always, but mostly from love.
Yeah.
And then kind of say, thank you very much. You know, I'm still going to do this thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I may completely look at what you said and said, no, thank you. Or I may integrate it, but in the end, you know, it's my process and I'm going to roll with it and with you. And
which brings me to another theory.
We got a lot here.
Men and women.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of studying about men and women. And it's such a fascinating thought. In my second book, this is part of a trilogy, by the way. And the second book is almost finished. It's called For Love of a Woman. And so I've been doing a lot of study and asking my friends, what books have you read about relationships that you love, you know? And one of the things that really resonated with me with what you just said was, listen, thank you very much. It comes from love. I'm still going to do it this way. One of the things I was reading about relationships is that in most cases, women don't want to influence their man that much. They want to share with them what they feel. Mm. So you come home with an idea, and you have an idea, and she shares it, well, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned, have you thought about that, have you thought about that? And being open, you say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you still do it, unless she changes your mind. If she changes your mind, that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
But if she doesn't, she appreciates it more if you say, thank you, I'm still going to do it my way.
That's interesting. Because
then she respects you as a man.
I'll have to ask my wife about this
theory. I know, I just kind of want Stephanie to get in on this. But it makes sense to me, because the last girlfriend I had taught me more about being a man than any relationship I've ever had. And it was so great. Because I've always figured, I'm very comfortable being a man. But there were places that I was just downright deficient. At least in that relationship, you know. And she'd say, step up. I went, yeah, cool, thank you. It was more of an awakening, you know.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, and I'm glad you also brought up that, you know, thank you, I'm still going to do my own thing. But at the same time, consider it.
Absolutely.
You know, because I like to think I'm always right.
Yes.
A lot of people do. You know, but I'm not a lot of the time, you know, and I think it's important to actually say, before you say, I'm still going to do my own thing, thank you, I'm grateful. Is it valid, is it not? And are there pieces of it that I can draw
Yes.
that are right for me that may not be right for somebody else. And then move on. Integrate or not, and then move on. But be open to, I think the huge thing is being open. I think a huge part of the creative process is embracing the opportunity to be wrong. You know?
Absolutely. I love what you said about, I like to feel that I'm always right. And I feel that way too. But I'm still looking for another idea. So
Yeah.
I'm right until you, but if something comes along, I'll drop that belief in a New York second, man.
Yeah.
And I think being open is the key. And I know that creatively, I've been open my whole life, you know? And my friend relationships have always been rich. In fact, my 34th birthday, I was thrown a wonderful surprise party, and everywhere I looked, I mean, I saw my childhood, I saw everybody, it was huge, it was so wonderful. And what occurred to me is I thought, oh my gosh, I'm wealthy. I am so wealthy. Look at these people. And every one of them I love, and every one of them is different. And I thought, to me, this is the true measure of wealth, is the depth of my friendships. And actually, if you want to hear a challenge for me has been able to bring that into a love relationship. Because it has a different dynamic. But again, I'm learning that it's about being open and remaining open.
Yeah. The eternal challenge. I mean,
it is a challenge, and I think if it were easy, it wouldn't be fun.
well, and also we're not wired to want to be open. I mean, our brains are literally wired to be uncomfortable with uncertainty, with the unknown.
Yes.
So it makes us physically uncomfortable, emotionally uncomfortable, but physically uncomfortable. So we want certainty. Security is another word for certainty.
Yes, exactly.
We want to know how it's going to end. You know, and very often the best option, the most creative option, the option that brings the most joy, the most nourishment to your life, is staying in the place where you don't know how it's going to end long enough for the next level of good stuff to arrive. But it's hard because we're not wired that way. And I practice every day. Yeah, I meditate every day in part to teach myself how to get more comfortable in that place, because I know that's where the good stuff lies, but it doesn't come naturally to most people. Some people it does, but I think it's really rare, those people.
I would agree with that. I love what we're talking about, Jonathan. This is so cool. I'm just having a ball.
Yeah,
this
me
is so
too.
great.
So I can't, you've been so amazing with your time and gracious. We talked about this before, so I'm not springing it on you. I would love if you would share a song with us, and one that we had spoken about. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you created "She's Out of My Life" for Michael Jackson.
I did. I didn't create it for him, but it was funny how it landed on him, actually, if you want to hear that little story.
Sure, yeah.
Well, I had been in a relationship for 2 years. I loved this woman very much. I wanted to marry her. But I had been married before. It didn't last long, and we parted friends. But there was something about the vows to me of "till death do us part" that really registered with me. And when we parted ways, my mind was questioning, well, if you're wrong about that, what else are you wrong about? And it wasn't a depression for me, but it was an introspection of searching every department of my character and being. And interestingly enough, I never doubted my creativity. But in terms of being a partner, being a man, and decision making and things of that nature, I was going through a restructuring. And meanwhile, I met this wonderful woman, and I was so in love with her. And she was half Cuban and half Irish. What a beautiful combination. The brightest blue eyes, the blackest hair, the whitest skin. It was like, whoa. And besides which, way beyond that, was her gentle yet powerful loving. But her father, being Cuban, was like, when are you guys going to get married? We went together for 2 years, you know. And she said, I'm getting a lot of pressure from my family. And I said, Rhonda, I want to marry you. There's no doubt. There's nobody I want, but I'm not ready. and I don't want to come to you until I'm ready. And so I don't want to start off with a handicap, you know. And finally she said, I can't wait any longer, nor can my folks. So either marry me or I'm moving on. And that was a very tough decision to make. But I decided to have her move on, to wish her the best. And it was torture. I don't regret that decision, by the way. But at the time, again, I followed my instincts. So I started dating, you know, to try to make up for that. And everybody I dated was like more vacuous than the last, and not having nothing to do with the quality of the woman. It was just where I was. So I was driving home from yet another vacuous date, and I'm on the Pasadena freeway. And I don't know if you've ever been in a emotional state where you actually talk out loud to yourself. But I was. I said, stop it. This was your decision. She wanted to marry you. She was ready to marry you. You said no. Deal with it. She's out of your life. And the moment I said that, it was like, boom, explosion. And the melody came in, the song came in 15 minutes. And by that time I arrived home, and I sat up for most of the night because it was so complex musically, although it doesn't sound that way. I stayed up the rest of the night learning the piano part because it was all there. I just had to teach my fingers. And there was only one word missing, and that actual word came from a buddy of mine who we were going out to play golf, and I was in the shower, and he was looking at my lyrics on the piano, and he saw a line there, and he says, I was just wondering, do you think the word expression would work there? And I went, whoa, dude, that's the word. Do I have to share this song with you? And he said, no. I didn't write the song. There's a word for you. And the first time I played it for Quincy Jones, this is another thing about being in tune with people. Quincy and I are so close. I wrote it on a Thursday. Wednesday night. Thursday, I go to my publisher, and I said, listen to this, guys. Played it for them, nothing. They didn't get it. I said, really? Wow, that worries me. So then I went up to Snuff Garrett, who had produced the song that I written. It was a hit for Cher. So I go up to Snuffy's office, and I said, tell Snuff I got a new song. Snuff comes around, and I says, let me hear it. I played it. He goes, oh my God, this is a hit. Who do you want to do it with? And I said, well, I think Frank Sinatra. I want a man of experience singing this. And he said, we'll record it next week. Shook hands. He said, I'll split the publishing with you. I said, okay. So that's on a Friday. Saturday morning, my phone rings. It's Quincy. We haven't seen each other for maybe 6 months. He says, hey man, are you writing? I said, yeah, I just wrote a song on Thursday. And he said, well, come over here and play it for me. So I sat down, and he had a wonderful room with the Fender Rhodes, and there was a sofa kind of catty-cornered in the back. So I sat down and played it, and it's ringing out, and he says, play it again. Play it again, ringing out, play it again. I played it 8 times in a row for him. And at the end of the ring out, when he finally didn't say play it again, he said, do you know how important this song is? And I said, well, I think it's a hit. And he says, it's more than that. I said, okay. And he says, what are you doing with it? And I said, well, I just made a deal with Snuff Garrett to produce it with Frank Sinatra. Typical Quincy remark coming up. Sinatra will do it anyway. I said, okay, so what are your thoughts? He said, I want to produce it. I said, well, Q, I already made a deal with Snuff. I shook hands, and he's going to have half the publishing. And he said, I bet he won't let you co-produce it with him. I said, you know he won't. And he said, well, give him a call, see. So I called him up and said, hey, Snuff, I'm over at Q's house, and he wants to do the song. He said, hey, man, you and I have a deal. And I said, I know that. But Quincy is offering to let me co-produce it with him. And he said, well, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, I think I want to go with Quincy. He says, yeah, but we have a deal. And I said, I understand. So how's this? How about if I give you a piece of the publishing to set me free? And he said, I'm good. That was it. Deal made. So I turned to Quincy, I said, okay, man, we're on.
Uh-huh.
Who are we going to do it with? And he said, I don't have a clue. I said, what? And he said, but if you trust me, I promise you a memorable recording. And we sat on that song for 2 years until we did The Wiz with Michael Jackson. And that's when Quincy got to know him. And that was the beginning of their partnership. I already knew Michael. I'd known Michael was 19 then, so I'd always known him for 8 years. And when Michael heard the song, he said, that's the single. That's the single. He called it the single all through the whole album. And Quincy said, we're not putting out a ballad for this single. It's not going to be, So that was kind of the road to She's Out of My Life. And when Michael came in to sing it, he loved that song so much. We did the first take and he cries at the end of it. And after the ring out, he says, I'm sorry, fellas, can we do it again? I said, yeah, we did it 12 times. He cried on most of them. And Quincy was thinking, man, we can't have him crying on that. Nobody's going to believe us. And then typical Quincy wisdom, he sits on it for a while and he goes, you know what? It was the truth. We were there, man. The truth's the truth. It's the best take. We all know it. Let's put it out that way. Nobody ever said, oh, I hate that crying at the end. They all knew it was the truth, too. The funny thing was, I said, Michael, did you just break up with somebody? He said, no, man, I just got into the lyric.
Yeah, so because the first thing I'm thinking is like, what story is playing in his head? Who's the person in his mind?
And the other thing is, Michael never swore. In fact, his nickname was Smelly because he wouldn't say funky. Because at the time, the coolest thing was a funky track. And we'd say, that is so funky. And Michael would say, that's so smelly. So that became his nickname. And he had never sworn. And yet there's a lyric in there that I figure I was going to have to change, which was damn indecision and cursed pride.
Right.
Michael sang it. I said, whoa, I'm surprised you sang that. And he said, it's not me, I'm an artist singing a song. So if it were a script, he might have done something like that, you know. It was a marvelous experience, and I love his take on it. It's been recorded by about 30 or 40 other artists, and I love every one of them. Maybe right after Michael's is Willie Nelson's version, which knocks me out. So it's been a labor of love. And you want me to sing this?
I would love for you to sing it if you're cool with that.
Me. Oh. For your listeners and watchers, you know, I was a studio rat. I was a gun for hire. I walked in, did the job, and left. So I'm not shy about this. I just hope I hit the right key. So the intro goes da 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 dee da da da, without the left hand. Da 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 dee da da da. She's out of my life. She's out of my life. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I don't know whether to live or die. And it cuts like a knife. She's out of my life. It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands. To think for 2 years she was here, and I took her for granted. I was so cavalier. Now the way that it stands, she's out of my hands. So I've learned that love's not possession, and I've learned that love won't wait. Now I've learned that love needs expression, but I learned too late. And she's out of my life. She's out of my life. Damn indecision and cursed pride. I kept my love for her locked deep inside, and it cuts like a knife. She's out of my life.
So beautiful.
Thank you, man.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
You. You just need to exhale and drink it in. Fabulous.
Thank you.
I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Me too, man.
So much fun traveling back with you and just enjoying your journey and the teachings from your father and your mother and your family and your friends, and from you, and the ability to share you and your lessons and your lens with the world. The name of this project, it's the Good Life Project. So when I offer that term out to you, to live a good life.
I'm sorry?
When I offer that term, to live a good life, to you,
yes.
What comes up?
Authentic. To live an authentic life. And I wish I could say I do. I do mostly. I mean, creatively, I don't think anybody's more authentic than me. I mean, I've got that so locked. I think my biggest challenge, because we all have them, has been relationships. I mean, I was married for 16 years. That's a pretty good chapter. And I look at my life in chapters, you know. When it ends, of course I have feelings about it, but I really treasure that. And to me, that's a chapter that I can go back to and read anytime. And then my chapter with Karen and having 2 babies with her was the greatest familial chapter of my life. And after that, I met a woman that I was with for 7 years. That was the best relationship I've had so far. And yet I left that relationship. And again, I was following my instincts. And I said to her, I need to be solitary. I'm just feeling it. And this is really when I went on this spiritual journey that led me to the book. So do I regret it? No, but am I fulfilled? Not yet. So I'm looking forward to that relationship that takes me to the next chapter, which will be on another planet somewhere. And I believe that that will happen, you know. And I love women, and I love what women bring to my life, the feminine energy, and what I learned from them. Because it's never going to come from a dude, man. And I know that that's the feminine, masculine,
yeah, no doubt,
yin and yang that we give to each other. And my personal challenge of living that life that you speak of is to remain as open as I am creatively in a relationship. So that's where I'm going.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for hanging out today.
Oh man, it's my pleasure.
It's been wonderful.
My pleasure.
And my guest today has been Tommy Bahler, composer, singer, songwriter, artist, author, fabulous new book, Anything is Possible. Check it out. Signing off for Good Life Project.